Hey guys, welcome back to the Workbench. Dan here as always, looking at some projects that I've gotten done here pretty recently. I haven't been working on too much stuff lately, I've just been busy, and I've finally gotten the last clientele car done too, out of my large collection of customer projects. I'm sending a lot of stuff back at this point. I know a lot of you guys have been reaching out trying to get custom models done by me, and I have to go ahead and just tell you guys right now, I've just been so swamped with work lately. The workload continues to get busier, and the hobby for me needs to stay a hobby. And when I keep doing cars for other people, it takes up all that time I have for the hobby to do more work, and it just burns you out. You get tired of doing it. And these cars just get more and more complicated, especially when people want cars with graffiti or heavily customized locomotives like what I build. And I don't think anyone does locomotives like I do, and I understand why I have that demand, but I just can't fill it out. I can't possibly do all the work that's being offered right now, so I have to turn a lot of this stuff down. And so I ask that you guys understand that. It's unfortunate, but I just got to take a break and just focus on my own stuff for now. But that being said, I'll still have plenty of cool cars to show off. But this one here is actually going to be the last client car I do for quite some time, maybe even a few years. We'll see what happens. But anyway, like I said, I've been working on a few different cars. These two gondolas here kind of got me back into my own modeling. So I'll go ahead and keep these aside for a second, and we'll start with this clientele model. This is the first hopper car I've done. For the most part in a while. This is a more modern Atlas BLMA air slide, the more modern pressurized car. This one is a GACX version here, and you can see this one's quite rusted up. This was a very interesting, unique car, and this was presented to me by another modeler who wanted this car done up. He sent me the model, and he asked if I could try to replicate this. Now, I've never done cars like this, so this was actually kind of a learning experience for me. And after looking at some prototype photos of a similar car with this kind of weathering here, I figured out how to do this, and basically I used an airbrush to kind of fan in this darker brown color. But first I actually took tape strips to mark it up, because for whatever reason the weld seams on this car stay clean, and then the rust just kind of forms on the inner part of the panel. It's pretty unusual. So I just masked off each individual weld strip, and then I did the heavy grime layer underneath with an airbrush, and then I followed behind with oils applied with a sponge, using the traditional sponge technique to just layer and layer bits of burnt umber oil until I was satisfied with it. And then once I kind of let it tack up, then I was able to go back, add some more detail, and I started to kind of fan it out a little bit with some mineral spirits to kind of just blend it a little bit. And it's not perfect, but I think it does capture the look of this unusual rust pattern pretty well. Added the anti-skid coating to the roof. You can see the walkways are really eaten up for whatever reason. This is something I had seen in some pictures. It looks like some equipment gets dragged and it takes all that fresh rust off the roof walk panels as it's getting scraped up. You can see it leaves this cool pattern, so that was something I focused on in the car. On the other side, it's pretty much the same thing. Just added that. This way it has a few more side swipes to it, because these cars do get banged up quite a bit by equipment, so they got some gashes on the side of the car starting to kind of rust up a little bit. They're starting to eat into some of that rust. The underbody's pretty basic. I still need to add what I was trying to say is I still need to add some chocks to the wheels and then the couplers, but other than that, this car's pretty much done, and I think it turned out pretty good. So hopefully the gentleman I did this for is watching this and he likes the car. I think it turned out pretty good. I might try to do one of these myself later on, but it is a lot of work to recreate that rust, but it is doable. Anyway, so that's the GATX car. The next cars I did were these two ML MX scrap gondolas. Now these cars used to be on the CND trains, and since I've been modeling a lot of CND cars lately, I decided I wanted to model at least two of these to have kind of mixed in to have the basically the scrap steel coming into the landfills for processing. In this case I used two Athearn RTR throw-all gondolas, actually from a 3-pack I believe. I kept one of the cars for something else, actually a rebuild I believe, and then these two got repainted. I got custom made decals for Sims Metal Management here. No one actually makes these, so I went through Circus City Graphics to actually have these decals made, and that's how I was able to get them done. For the panels, I added my own styrene panels using the 0.5-inch styrene trick. I just warped out the panel with a toothpick, a knife, and then basically individually hand applied each panel over the existing panel. I repainted the entire car, custom decaled it using prototype photos, added the safety striping, the data and all that, some graffiti where needed, and then you can see the heavy rust that's on the sides of these cars. It's just my combination of oils to paint the basic line, and then I use the powders applied with a fine tip micro brush to enhance them and then kind of streak the powder down to make it look like fresh rust streaking down the side of the car. And you can see the cars have end panels here which are pretty beat up, kind of warped up. I used custom foam bases I inserted into these cars, and I added real scrap steel to all of these. And it's not weathered, that's the natural rusty color of the real scrap steel that I use, which is actually from a rusty staircase that I walk by going to work every day. So that's how I was able to get the styrene, or not the styrene, but the metal for this. The styrene part I was trying to refer to was that I added styrene reinforcing strips to the tops there as well, not just the ends, because those were all added when these cars were shopped originally, like in 2005, 2006. So in this current paint scheme, they've definitely gotten quite beat up, but you can see they all look pretty good. So there's the 112. The other one is 106, and in this case, this one has a little bit more cool graffiti. It's got the safety striping, kind of beat up. It's got the graffiti. Warp panels, all that good stuff. Again, the custom Sims Metal Management logo there. It's kind of hard to see. You got all the graffiti coming down the side, and then this one has some repatched stencil lettering there, which is pretty cool. Trucks and wheels are all nicely grimed up, of course. Got the custom load in the interior of this one, and on this opposite side here, pretty much the same. But I like the way this came out. I think they both came out really good. This one also is really cool because it has the boat outside where it's actually starting to tear, kind of at the bottom, because you see a lot of holes forming in these older gondolas where they eventually just the sides get so badly oxidized, corroded, eaten away that stuff eventually starts to bulge out. The panels warp, cracks begin to form, and eventually they just burst, and you have holes like this in the sides of these cars all the time. So I wanted to model two pretty well beat up cars, and I think they came out pretty good. I'll make some more of these down the road because I still got a whole sheet of these decals I got custom made, pretty cheap, so I'll be able to make a few more of these as I go. Here I got some more Autorax coming up here. These are all cool cars. These are from the latest run of the Scale Trains Autorax. I was able to put it in a last minute order for a couple cars. I think I got 10 more on top of the additional 10 that I had already bought. They're all sitting out in my garage waiting to get worked on. So I started doing a couple of these up as I get time off from work. Just doing graffiti, and then eventually I spend the time weathering them. It's all pretty easy to do. The time-consuming part making these cars look nice is doing the prototypical graffiti, which in this case I use a lot of prototype photos that I take myself to get graffiti reference, scribble graffiti reference, all that. So in this case this is a CTTX tri-level, excuse me. And with this one, just got some light weathering. I just do mostly powder weathering down the sides. I use a black wash to darken up the panels on top because they usually have this really cool oxidized metallic color to them, and I like to add that textured look to them as well, so that's a cool little effect. Just a lot of chalk weathering down the sides to darken things up, darken the panels up, and give them a just basic level of road grime that these are starting to get. A lot of these cars are, I think, going on quite a few years now. I mean, what are we looking at here? I think a lot of these started coming out in what would it have been, maybe 2013, 2014. So a couple of these do have quite a bit of mileage on them, and they do get pretty dirty. Some of them have gotten pretty beat up, but in this case it's pretty standard weathering here, and again the real emphasis here is on the graffiti, the repatched parts of the car, which I did. You got the safety striping over the graffiti, and again all this is copied from photos. On the ends they're pretty simple, just got all the grime and kick up and everything. Just starting at the base of the car. There's usually not too much actual splatter, it's just mostly dust. And as we look at this opposite side, again, pretty simple. And again, this is a general in-service car. So you can see the graffiti is pretty minimal, it's pretty light, it's not fancy, but this is what you see in real life. Not every car is a, 5-star, beautiful graffiti piece, rolling piece of art. A lot of times they get a lot of scribble like this, a lot of crappy art that you see. And it's all part of the character of these cars, it's what you see. So again, I modeled a few of these with a lot of this, and that's mostly what a lot of my Autorax look like. I do have a lot of extravagant weathering on some of these, and I have a lot of great graffiti cars, but a lot of the majority of my Autorax look like this. So that's what I like to call these general in-service cars. Anyways, this one came out pretty good. So that's the NS one with all the graffiti. Again, I added the reflective tape striping to this, and then the wheels and trucks are nicely weathered up, which I really love the Scale Trains wheels because they have those rotating bearings. Such weird looking trucks. It's crazy how these are such large cars and they only need small wheels. Crazy. Alright, so there's the NS. And I gotta reach over here, excuse me guys. The second one is a white BNSF version. This one was from the first one I bought from. This one Oh, I actually forgot to renumber this side, so I gotta actually fix that. I'll go back and fix that later. But anyway, what we're looking at here is the BNSF white version. I think this is a bi-level. And you can see, again, it's just some minimal weathering. I got a lot of grime coming down from the top. It starts to grime up very, very quickly. Got the custom little scribble graffiti. I got the larger graffiti bits here. This simplified graffiti here looks pretty cool. That's all done with acrylic paints, hand-painted. New safety striping's been added over this, obviously, but I forgot to add the patch. That's something I got to fix on this. Lots of grime on the top. Again, the dark wash applied to the roof panels to make them look a little bit more realistic. You got all the kick-up on the ends with the spray. You got the reflective striping, all the grime on the couplers, and on the ends, the top, everything else. On this side, pretty much the same. This one's got some pretty neat graffiti that I copied. Here you can see I already redid the stenciling on this side. I just forgot to do it on the opposite, so I basically got to repeat that. And I just used some microscale decals to repatch that and some white paint to patch that over on this side. But here again, pretty much more of the same. You just got lots of grime coming from the top of the car. The panels are grimed up and all the graffitis painted on there. And it all looks pretty good. You know, again, a nice general in-service car. That all looks very nice, all prototypical. I do love that graffiti though. That all looks very nice. So the funny thing that happened after I did those Scale Trains cars, working on all Scale Trains Autorax lately, I kind of forgot that Atlas produced a couple schemes, and they recently produced a few schemes that I actually wanted, so I was on eBay one day, found them, and put them in my shopping cart. And first one here is the really unusual BNSF version where they just kind of lazily put a BNSF decal on the main portion of the large reinforced panel here. Not here. Most of the BNSF wrecks have the genuine orange logo. This was kind of a quick decal shop thing. I don't know why they did it this way, but it's a unique car in that respect. There's quite a few of these, but they are rarer than the standard BNSF cars, which again have the orange logo on the metal perforated panel here. Obviously these don't have as much detail as the Scale Trains cars, however they still do look, I think, bang up quite nice. And they weather up pretty much the same. I think they're easier to weather though because they're not as slippery as the Scale Trains cars with all that metal. So again, just some basic grime down the sides. I just grimed things up a little bit. I chipped up the logo a little, got some random little tags, some bits of scribble, chalk scribble, marker scribble. That's very common on Autorax. Again, just about any other car. Some basic graffiti there. I copied from a picture I took of a similar car. All that looks pretty cool. Pretty cool. There's a little controversial, but you know, it's got to be said because it's true. Ha! Anyways, all that looks real nice. You can see how the grime kind of gathers in those bolt holes, streaks down. That's real cool. The roof is just treated on this one with a little bit of rusty powder on the seams because it weathered differently than the standard weathering I was doing with that dark wash. And then again on the ends, standard weathering there. Trucks look real good with the powders. Got some mud splatter, nice dusty effects. And then on this side, pretty much the same. Nice and plain, keeping it real simple here. I like being able to display these cars because a lot of these don't have graffiti. And a lot of them, maybe they only have graffiti on one side. In this case, this does have some small tags, just kind of hidden, kind of around, like that, as you can see. A little something I like to do with some fine tip Sharpie markers, micron pens, things like that. You can do these little tags very easily. And I did add the safety striping, the reflective tape, to that one. So that's the BNSF orange one that I really like. That one came out really good. The last one from Atlas that I got is a TTGX lease scheme. And I was a little disappointed that Scale Trains didn't offer this in the rivet counter. They only offered it in the operator series, which is okay. It's still an affordable model. So I decided not to get one until I found that Atlas did this exact scheme. So it was a win-win for me. So I ended up getting one of these, and again, it's just like all the others. Quite a bit of heavy grime concentrated down that sill. Coming down, it collects in all those perforations, bolt patterns. Starts to streak down from those posts, like that. Lots of good grime on the trucks there. Excuse me, guys, I don't know where that came from. And you can see it's just kind of accumulating all over the place. Randomly streaking down. So it's a very grimy car, but again, this one's pretty simple. Just some grime on the end. Nice black dark wash on the roof. Make it nice and dirty. And then on this side, pretty much the same. Just a nice little bit of grime. But as you can see, it's very prototypical. It's very realistic to how these cars weather up currently. It's just a lot of grime. It starts to streak down. So it's a good way to learn some basic grime effects. All of this can be achieved basically with powder. And in this case, the only wet weathering I did was actually painting the wheels, couplers, and some work on the underbody. But all that is, again, very basic. You can see, again, there's some grime starting to kick up. Just getting all over the running gear, all over the brake cylinders and things like that. But pretty simple. And I like these simple weathering jobs because it really does let you focus primarily on the beauty and really the nice looking paint schemes that these cars have. So I like modeling cars like this because you can get a lot out of them. The weathering is just a prototypical enhancement. Alright, so I'm starting to run out of battery here. I'll try to make this quick. I recently got another tunnel motor done up. This one is one I just recently got on eBay and fixed up. It is LTEX4972. This is my third attempt at making a model of this locomotive. And I actually have a video coming up on how to do the rear gear modification to these tunnel motors. As you can see, it's completely see-through. There used to be a tower gear there and I removed that. And now the truck is remounted with some styrene. And again, I'll have a how-to video on how to modify that coming up here pretty soon. But as you can see, this one is just weathered up from photos. I used a lot of fading techniques to just kind of lighten it up. These leaser units get really beat up. I did a lot of grime. I detailed up the trucks. I added real reflective tape to the sills, modified the stock patching, and then this one has a cab interior where it actually has the control stand and it has the speedometer gauge there inside the cab, which is pretty cool. So that was the first of some experimental cab interiors I wanted to try to do. You can see it has the seats and everything. The numbers are all beat up, the patching's all beat up, you got lots of rust down the sill, the tank's all grimed up, it's got all the prototypical details added, the air filter, the appropriate fuel tank detailing, nice truck detailing. It's nicely rusted up, all the grills are grimed up. I just used some light washes after I did the heavy fading effects to just kind of beat everything up. I used some powders to enhance some things. The roof is pretty cool because when I did the fading effect, I used some acrylic paint out of an airbrush, and then I went back and I used some alcohol and a micro brush to kind of carefully make some little spots where the paint can chip up and peel a little bit, and that's how I was able to replicate these little spots where it's actually worn away, revealing the primer underneath. It's pretty cool. Nicely rusted up top grill there. See-through fans, all that good stuff. You got a little bit of exhaust streaking. I added the prototypical details like the grab irons. I added the new horn, the antenna. On the plow I added the prototypically correct snow plow with grab irons. I made the custom SP style lift grab there for the coupler pin. Added the ditch lights, which are 3D printed. New MU stand, all kinds of details. I removed the class lights on the nose. You can see they're completely removed, and I repainted the nose and repatched it. And I also had to just do some other basic rearranging of some parts to make this locomotive a little bit more prototypically accurate. On the other side, pretty much the same. I think this side has maybe a little bit more rust compared to the opposite. There's a lot more grease and grime. Again, just modeling a very well-worn old lease locomotive. Again, I really love that cab interior. It really adds a lot more flavor to the model, so it's going to be something I'm going to start doing pretty regularly on my model builds now. This truck has the speed recorder. Again, you can see all the nice details I added on the front pilot there. All the heavy rust and grime, all the washes that I applied. And you can actually see the mud splatter. Something I wanted to point out. You can see the mud splatter on the truck frames. Love to do that effect. You also have it on the fuel tank, of course, because that's another area where you're going to see a lot of heavy mud splatter. The sills are all getting beat up. You can see they're starting to chip away. Usually the red Teflon tape starts to peel, and you get these areas in the reflective tape where it kind of just peels off and you see these little white patches. The LTX logo's wearing out a little bit, and again you just got a good overall bit of rust and grime, just making this thing look a little bit more used, a little bit more modern. I believe the real locomotive was sold to the All Road in Brazil, but in my road I'm saying it's still around, and it looks really cool. I love these old 45T tunnel motors. You gotta love the look of them. Very iconic. I remember growing up as a kid I used to see a lot of these leased tunnel motors go by my house on NS. They were used a lot on CSX mostly, but NS did get a few from LTEX and I think NREX and GECX. So I like to have one of these. Anyways, I got the, again, the nice details on the ends, prototypically correct details on the plow, whole 9 yards. So it really speaks for itself. I really don't have to say much. You can see all the exquisite detail on this model. And I love making locomotives like this. These are really what inspire me to continue on in the hobby. When you get stuff like this, you spend the time and effort detailing and making something, you really get these works of art. I absolutely love this locomotive. No, I'm not going to sell it. It's quite beautiful. Very happy with it. It's worthy of just being in a display case. It really displays my new standard of real attention to realistic weathering with texture and patterns and things like that. I'm really trying to crack down and get these things right when I do locomotives. I spend a lot of time, you know, I spend countless hours researching these things and trying to replicate what I see, and that's why my locomotives are different than everyone else's. You know, I really try to put in the effort to make these things look good, and that's why I just can't offer these kind of services to customers anymore, because they just take so long. I think this one took me about a month or two to build. Starting with the base model, and again, most of the patchwork and everything was already done for me. The work was spent fading it, repainting parts of it, redoing patching, adding decals, taking off decals, adding detail parts, repainting parts of it. It's a lot of work to make these prototypical locomotives, but it's always worth it in the end because you get these real nice looking works of art. Now I do have another tunnel motor over here that I'll show very briefly. I got this one here, but I'll save it for another video. I just got this one done. This one will be our crash test dummy for an upcoming video on how to actually modify the rear gear on these tunnel motors. So I'll be demonstrating how I actually cut the gear tower off and basically remount the truck. That way it stays in place and it'll swivel. So you guys can keep an eye out for that. I will have a how-to video on how to do that coming up here pretty soon. I got some other HLCX units. I got some more Autorax coming up. There's a look at one I've been doing. And I wasn't going to show this one, but I'll just bring it in since we're wrapping up this video. This is the other one I'm doing. This is going to be another Canadian HLCX unit. A very unique one, and I'm very excited about. So you guys can stay tuned for this in the next video. That will be coming up here pretty soon. There's a good look at my cab interior trick too. Here you can see I just basically mock up a control stand, mount it on the floor, making sure it clears the where the tower clearance is for the truck. But as you can see, this one is just starting off. I just started to weather it. It's coming along, so you guys can stay tuned again for this one. This one coming up, these Autorax. I got a bunch more cars out on this table in my dining room, and I have another module I want to show you guys that I built. So that'll all be coming up in the next video. So as always, thank you for watching, guys. Thank you for taking the time to spend with me to look over my projects. I'll keep you guys posted on some more projects coming up. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.